Welcome to the Love Unplugged podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Frigon. You may know me from Project Love, where we focus on operational excellence, but here we go deeper. We're your go-to for raw, empowering conversations on entrepreneurship and stepping into your CEO role with love and confidence. Each week, we'll explore everything from mindset shifts, leadership, optimal wellness, to efficient systems, all within a community of visionary women like you. Ready to get real about building a business and life you love? Hit subscribe and let's start this transformative journey together. Hello, loves. Today I am joined by the incredible Pia Beck of Curate Wellco. Pia Beck is an anchor, advocate, and accelerating force for women identifying owned small businesses around the world. After a career in people operations in the tech and startup worlds, where she crafted departments from the ground up, doubled national teams, and spun up infrastructures to hit goals faster and fuller, Pia realized that there was only so much change she could make from within a container built by someone else. So she started Curate Wellco. Through business strategies, scale supporting structure, and seamless go-to savvy, Pia's role is to care about the details as much as you do, so you can make a difference in the way that only you can. From integrating a deep understanding of customer needs to refining company operations to delivering captivating consumer experiences and company-driven brands, she helps small businesses change narratives and redefine norms in industries that are desperately calling for something different. Pia is a coffee enthusiast as much as she is a business consultant, considers building spreadsheets an art form, and believes logistics are a love language. So welcome, Pia. I am so incredibly honored to have you as a guest on the show. I'm so excited to dive into your journey, but also your expertise. But before we start with that, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about you personally for those that don't know you yet.
Thank you so much for that lovely intro and for having me. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to this conversation since we scheduled it. So I'm based in Santa Barbara, California, which I absolutely love, with my husband and our dog King, who's getting a little bit old, but still has plenty of fun running around on the beach. And I own a second business as well that is coming up on its first anniversary, which is called Considered Coffee. So we are a micro mobile coffee shop. So think food truck, but in a vintage VW bus, a 1965 VW bus, and coffee instead of food. So when I'm not working with our clients on the Curate side, I'm usually making lattes.
I love that. Coffee is... that's one of the dreams that me and my husband have, is like having some kind of a coffee shop or something, just coming home smelling like coffee every day.
Yeah, it's so funny. So we make all of our like syrups and our chai reduction and everything in-house. It's like one of the things that kind of sets us apart. But I constantly am like drowning in the smell of chai, which sounds
delicious.
really nice, but it actually kind of gets old pretty quickly. But no, it's so much fun. I love it. It was kind of like on my life goal list for a long time as well. And I've learned so much from it. It's been really cool to have a creative outlet. And it's very much like a living, breathing example of what we do at Curate, because I leveraged our team and, my expertise and our structure and our systems and our process on that side to build the second business. So it's really cool to have like this business out there that is like a constant, representation of what we do at Curate. And there's a lot of, the knowledge and the experience that I gained on the Curate side that I was able to apply when I was building and launching that business. But there's also like this whole other set of things that I like had no idea how to do, was not expecting, were very challenging that I've learned so much from this year. And it's a lot of work, but it's also a really great way to, be connected in the community, and requires a very different, like kind of part of my brain than some of our Curate work does. So it's really stimulating in that respect too.
Probably gives you a little bit of like balance between the two when you're like, I just need to get out of this state right now from Curate and then go work and use a different part of my brain. And
totally.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into being a multi-passionate entrepreneur later, but let's start at the very beginning. Before starting Curate, what were you doing? Were you in school for something? Was it always a dream to start your own business in this area?
Yeah, good question. So I had a career in HR and people operations before I started Curate. And that was, let's see, I started Curate about 4 years ago at this point. So like right before the pandemic. So I think I like filed all the business paperwork in, late 2018. By summer 2019, I had like gone full time. And then, the COVID-19 pandemic kind of hit its moment. It's like emergence in January of 2020. So it was pretty soon after I started that business, which has been really interesting. But I never like set out to be like, oh, I'm going to start an online business. We don't really identify as an online business. And like that was never really like what I was thinking. I had a career. I worked at tech companies and startups in kind of like full service HR capacity. So everything from recruiting and hiring and onboarding to benefits administration, payroll, policies and procedures, the whole deal. And there were parts of that job that I really liked, but there were also parts of it that I really didn't like so much. But I gained really valuable experience in creating things from nothing. I was always the first person to fill the roles that I filled. And specifically in my last job before I left to start Curate, I came on when the company had like 75 people. They did not have an HR department. And in the time that I was there, the team grew to like 175. And their business model was to kind of like copy and paste their operation in a new city every like 6 to 9 months. And so, they really needed systems that worked in each city, but also worked kind of from the like business perspective across all of the cities. And I obviously wasn't in all of those places. So I had to create systems that could be um, implemented and adhered to by the managers without me being there. So it was partially like an HR job and partially like equipping them to be HR for their teams a little bit. And, I kind of just like hit a little bit of a breaking point and was like, I'm good at this. I'm going to do it. And I want to do it with people that I really want to work with. I want to do it completely in my way. And there was almost like a like sexiness that was missing too for me, which I think is where like the marketing piece comes in, right? Where like really connecting it to like consumers and people is what's exciting to me and what drives me. If I look back at like my whole life, I like totally was an entrepreneur in the making. Like I was always like selling bracelets on the side of the street. And like I remember like there was this summer that I think it was like 8 or 9. I had this vision of like running a summer camp for kids that were younger than me. Like it's really cute and funny to think about it now. But I didn't like realize that, right? I didn't grow up and say like, oh, I'm gonna be a business owner when I grow up. But if I look back, I'm like, okay, it was always kind of there.
Interesting. I love how you kind of mentioned that breaking point in corporate, and I think a lot of people resonate with that. You get to a certain point, you're like, okay, this is definitely not the road for me. Like even for myself, it still sticks with me to this day where I realize that there's got to be something else because my manager at the time, she was like, you will never make what you can make out there here.
Mm. Mm.
And I was like, I'm making 50K and I'm asking for a 5K raise. And I'm
Yeah.
like, really? Like, my title everywhere else is making crap loads more, and I'm only
Right.
asking for 5K more.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, no. I'm like, the moment she said that, I'm like, you just did yourself a huge disservice
Yeah.
because, like, now I'm out. Like,
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think like now that I've been in owning my own businesses for a couple of years now, there's benefits, right? Like there's totally benefits to having a really stable job and like knowing that at the end of the day you're going to get a paycheck no matter what,
mhm.
and not having to be the ultimate responsible party for everything, right? Anything and everything. And there's definitely days where I like, kind of miss that a little bit. I'm like, oh, it'd be so nice just to like shut my computer at 5 o'clock and just be like done and not have to think about anything for the rest of the night. But, when it comes down to it, I choose this over and over and over again.
Yeah, 100%. Same here. I'm like, I'm going, like, I've just recently went full time with my business, and I'm like, I can't go back to that.
Yeah.
Chained to my desk 9 hours a day, and like, having to ask for permission to take a day off or have a vacation. You only get so much. Like, I just can't see myself going back to so much of a restriction.
Hmm.
But I totally understand what you mean. Like, it's not just sunshine and roses here on the entrepreneur side. You are responsible for your own success, and that comes with its own set of challenges for sure.
Yeah.
Now, you've created an incredible business. You obviously have a second business as well. You've had incredible success. Let's talk about your biggest lessons throughout your journey that have really created an impact with you.
Hmm. I would say that, I mean, it changes, right? Every season, every year, there's different lessons. And especially, having started Curate right before our world changed like really drastically, and then having kind of like the, you know, aftermath of that shake out, like none of us have really like totally known what to expect, right? It's like, all right, what's this year going to look like? And so the like lessons that I've learned in business, I think have reflected that, where, there's no like one thing where I'm like, oh yeah, like this is the lesson that I learned. It's like every month, every quarter, every year, there's like more lessons. Most recently, I would say that I have learned about the importance of failing fast. So I grew up as like a super type A, perfectionist, people pleaser, some might say like rigid type of person, and grew up with a narrative of like hard work and accountability, and so I really like to like do things all the way. And it took a couple of, I think, big, like, sunken cost moments for me to realize, like, oh, I just need to, like I knew this months ago, right? But I just couldn't let go. I was so focused on like trying to make it work that I didn't, I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't okay with just saying, like, it's not working, drop it, move on, try something else. And that's been huge for me, honestly, is just almost being like a little bit impatient with some of the things that I am trying out. I'm a big advocate of, we can speculate as much as we want to, we can plan, we can strategize, but ultimately nothing replaces action, right? So let's say you're like making an ideal client profile. If you don't have actual data to work off of, that's only going to get you so far, right? At a certain point, you need to just start working with people, anyone, right? Say yes to everyone. And over time, you'll be able to notice trends based on who you've actually worked with, and it'll be a much more reliable profile. So action is super valuable in my opinion, and I think action is better than no action, regardless of how much or how little strategy or thought has gone into it. And so I'm a big proponent for both of my teams now on like taking action very quickly and then iterating and building very quickly. And that's something that I've been doing for a long time, but I think that the like letting go piece has been hard for me in the past. And so specifically over the last, I would say like year and a half, I think I've gotten a lot more impatient, but like in a really productive way, right? Of like, it feels like this should be working by now, and it's not. So, okay, we're done. We gotta like switch it up, drop it, stop allocating resources to it, whether it's money, time, energy, attention, whatever, and like adjust and try something different. And that's been a really, really helpful thing to feel comfortable with over time.
How long did it take for you to be able to make that change in behavior or habit?
That's a good question. I don't know exactly. I think it's one of those things that like with everything that doesn't go as planned, which has been so much the last year for me, especially with this coffee business, I think it strengthened it just like a little bit, right? Like every time it was like, you kind of take a little bit of a blow and then you like come back to it. It's like, okay, what am I doing differently this time? So it was a pretty like gradual process. But I would say that like after I've like had to learn the same hard lesson more than once, I'm like, okay, get it together. Like do not continue to make yourself like learn this lesson. Like you've got the message. You need to just like solidify this into your brain.
Yeah, I love that. I know that's going to resonate with a lot of people. Let's talk about your expertise. So let's hear about a memorable experience with a client that really tested your skills, and how you navigated that situation. So, like you were just mentioning, getting in there, starting to work with clients, taking everything that you can get just so that you can start, learning that landscape a little bit more of working with a client and what they need and how you're going to go about doing that. Let's put that into your experience.
Hmm. So I think that I don't know if I can call out like one specific experience, but I'll say that one of the things that really has tested my skills recently that the coffee business has really taught me is just feeling more comfortable saying no. So with a, consulting business and when we're working with clients and people on, not only like the thing that drives them and like their life's work, but usually like their livelihood too. I really come from an ethos of like, if it will make a difference, we'll do it, right? So we're not really like scope police with our clients, right? If there's like an extra email or an extra PDF or like some sort of deliverable or an extra like 30-minute call that's going to like help us uncover this thing that we've been stuck on or whatever, like we'll just do it because it has an impact, right? And so that's ultimately what we're measuring is like, did we achieve the outcome that our client is hoping for? And if we had to do something a little bit extra to get there, like I'd rather just do that and have it, be the outcome that everybody wants. And I think that, it's one of the things that our clients really appreciate about us is that we're pretty flexible. And I think it's one of the things that, really kind of holds our team together too, is that we really do kind of like put the people first. And, as like someone who has had people pleasing tendencies for such a long time, and as someone who really likes to do a good job and really wants to help people, I have a hard time saying no to a lot of things. And I think that the coffee business has given me access to saying no without it feeling like such a big deal. So, for example, we have people come up all the time and they're like, do you have whipped cream? Do you have white chocolate mocha? And that's not the kind of coffee shop that we are, right? We're not Starbucks. And so it's just like, no, we don't. And so I think that I've, had the opportunity to say no in like such small, like micro doses almost, so much with that business that it's made me feel a little bit more comfortable kind of bringing that back into the curate side and saying no to certain things or saying, we can't just do this, but we can do it if blank, right? Or are you comfortable, not producing this asset and doing this one instead? Or we can do that, but we'd have to send you an addendum and true up our scope and, your payments are going to be impacted. Are you comfortable with that? Right. So I think it's given me a little bit more comfortability with saying no in like a really empowered way and not just like saying it to say it, but really just saying like, okay, here's what I can do and here's what I can't do.
Yeah, and I feel like clients respect that. Like, I'm a people pleaser too, and I want to go above and beyond. And I've always felt like if I say no to a client, how are they going to respond to that? How are they going to take it? Is it going to impact their experience, etc.? But I love the approach that you go, which I like to do as well as providing them options that
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with,
Mm-hmm.
right? And seeing what they say. And every single time, I have never had an issue. The client has been like super respectful. They're like, absolutely, yes, do that or do this. And yes, no problem increasing the quote and like whatnot. Like, I think we underestimate how amenable our clients are going to be, especially when they make changes to the scope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about this ever evolving landscape of business consulting. It's like the wild, wild west, sometimes it feels like. How do you stay adaptable and responsive to new trends or unexpected shifts in the market, like AI in the last little while and things like that?
I love this question. So, I mean, I definitely try to keep some sort of a pulse on, what brands that I admire are doing and putting out, and just kind of like keep my eyes peeled for things that stand out to me of like, oh, wow, that's a really good example of like this principle, right? Or, oh, that really caught my attention. Like, let's dissect that and like identify why. And then how can I translate that into, growing either of my businesses or sharing it with a client if it aligns with, the work that we're doing for them. So I definitely like kind of stay open to those types of signals, but I don't have a lot of structure around it, right? Like it's not like I block off a certain amount of time to like consume or like scroll on social media or whatever throughout the day. I kind of let it happen organically. I also think that, in general, we don't necessarily hop on a lot of the trends. This is something that I've felt really strongly about since starting Curate, which is like in, a digitally driven world, there's always going to be something new. There's always going to be a new feature on Instagram. There's always going to be technological advances. There's always going to be cultural events in our world and in our day-to-day life that impact our businesses. And we really only lean into those things when it feels aligned with our ethos and the business that we want to be. So we're really clear on what we value, why we exist, how we do the work that we do, and what we are really showing up for every day. And if, any of those developments supports any of those things, we'll explore it, we'll try it out, we'll test it. But there's a lot of things that we like don't even try, right? We'll stay open to it, right? But it's like not worth a test because it just doesn't align with what we do. So I wouldn't say that we're like super on the trend wagon. You gave the example of AI. And so I'll use that as an example kind of in response. AI is a really powerful technical mechanism, right? And I believe that there is going to be a day where it can replace a lot of the manual things that we do and a good part of like human cognition, right? And really truly like automate so many things that are not automated today. I personally don't think it's there yet. And so we don't really use AI. We had one former client who ended up at the end of their contract not resigning with us because they were like, oh, a lot of what you do, AI can do. And I was like, I personally don't believe that that's true yet. I think it could be in the future, but it's not there yet. And I was like, that is a really helpful thing for you to say because it tells me that you don't fully understand and or value what's happening in this relationship. And if you don't value something that's happening in a relationship, it does not make sense for you to pay for it. So like great. I'm so glad that you said that and I'm so glad that I heard that and we can, end our relationship on a really high note knowing that like we got you to a certain point and you feel set up for success moving forward. I have worked with a client who anytime I ask them to, send over anything, right? Like I need product descriptions. So just like brain dump your product descriptions into a Google Doc, send it over to me, we'll polish it, we'll make it the right character count, we'll clean it all up, we'll get it website ready, all the things. And they were like, okay, I'm going to drop it in ChatGPT. And then they would just send it over. And what I would get back is I'm like, this has nothing to do with your products. We're talking about your SKUs, your product lines. I need to know what the ingredients are and what the benefits are of those ingredients. I need to know how it's formulated and how it's tested and how it's manufactured. And what I got back is like this very general, like, here are the selling points of this category of product, right? Which is interesting at a high level, right? It's interesting that you can give this tool this prompt and it can like tell you that stuff back, but this doesn't get me where we need to go for people to purchase your product. And so, I think when it comes to new developments like that, it's really important to like vet what those things are, whether it's like a trend for like trending audio on social media or like, a viral social media trend that's catching on, whether it's a technological advancement or a tool, whether it's like something that you're just seeing across the landscape. I think it's really important to pause and say like, okay, is this doing what it like promises to be doing? Is there a way that we can use this? Does it make sense for us to use this in alignment with what we promise our community and our clients and like what our brand stands for? And like, do we actually like want to? And so I think that we kind of take that approach. And that's not to say that like I'm not curious, right? But we're always just thinking about like how do we cause the outcome that our clients are looking for? And is focusing on that thing gonna do it?
Mhm. Absolutely. I love how you talked about, replacing jobs, which I think a lot of things that are coming out causes a lot of fear for people because they think,
Mm,
especially AI, they think that it's going to wipe out their job. And then it kind of creates a little bit of resistance in
mm,
utilizing it as a tool in their toolbox and not
mhm,
something that's going to replace them, like when it comes to social media content creation.
mhm,
No, as trained as my chat GPT is with my brand, and I have a brand book and custom instructions and all of that stuff, she doesn't spit out stuff the way that I want it to sound that is going to resonate with my ideal target audience. You know what I mean? Like you need a human voice, and I can spot
really.
people's AI content
Yeah,
versus
you can tell.
personality. You
Yeah,
can tell, right? And yeah, okay, there's some AI content in my stuff, but I try to add a little bit of personality to it because people are choosing to purchase with me, right? Like they're choosing to connect with me as a service provider, and that know, like, build and trust and all that type of stuff
totally.
is done through content that I create. So it's
Yeah.
just so interesting.
Another really interesting thing that's come up with a bunch of our clients. So we work with a decent amount of like organizational consultants. And one of the things that actually has come up a lot recently on that topic is that a way to like leadership training, for example, now is really shifting towards the like quote unquote soft skills, right? And it's because automation and because AI are getting more sophisticated and are getting more powerful, and they can replace certain things, but they cannot yet replace that human factor that you were just talking about. And so, if we're going to equip the leaders for tomorrow, they need a lot less of the technical skills and they need a lot more of the things like sensitivity, emotional intelligence, and like human centric workplace culture development. Those are like three examples from some of our recent clients, and it's like that's empathy, right? Like these are the things that AI cannot yet replicate. And so if we translate that into like marketing, for example, there is so much content that's generated by AI. And so it's actually in our interest, in my opinion, to kind of stand out from that and create really human centric, customer centric marketing that really requires you to understand how someone is feeling.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the only way it's going to resonate with people, right? I love that. Now, let's talk about your business, Curate Wellco. What does it mean to take a full stack approach to your business?
Hmm. So, full stack is a technical term. So, I started my career recruiting software engineers, specifically full stack software engineers. So, in software development, full stack means that you not only work on the front end, or the back end, but you kind of approach the development of the technology as like an integrated whole. So the front end is everything that the customer sees, right? So you open up an app on your phone and like how it looks, what you can click on, what it does when you click on stuff, how well it scrolls, all of the kind of like intuitive hand motions. That's all the front end. The back end is like the power, right? It's the stuff you don't see that like makes it all run that way. And, as consumers, we don't really like think about that stuff because we don't see it and we don't always appreciate it, right? A full stack developer of software is someone who can not only like create the front end and create the back end, but because they have both of those perspectives, can also kind of fill in everything in between, right? And really make it a super intuitive, seamless, complete, thoughtful, thorough feeling customer experience, because they can not only build, this half and this half, but they can actually like connect the two and weave them together and almost like bricks with cement, like fill it in between. And so I borrowed that term from that industry and applied it to what we do at Curate. So before we started recording, you were like, wow, it seems like you do this like huge range of stuff, which is totally true. And what we have found is that the way that we build relationships with our clients, the way that I've successfully built both of my businesses, and the way that my brain strategically thinks about brand building and business growth really requires kind of touching a lot of different pieces. This is something I've talked a little bit about on my platforms, but not a ton, but I actually have OCD. And so what that means is that when something feels kind of like unfinished, it like tickles my brain. There's a lot of different, aspects to OCD. That's not a complete, you know, overview of the experience by any means. But, as it relates to like this question, when, I touch one thing, but then there's like this other piece of it that then like kind of doesn't match and like isn't fully connected, isn't integrated, they're not like working together. It like gets stuck in my brain, right? And I'm like, oh, it's like an itch, like you want to scratch it. You're just like, I really wish this all just like worked together and like felt really solid. And so we borrowed that term to really try to like put some structure around the way that we support our clients, because instead of showing up and saying like, yeah, we do everything, which is like overwhelming for the client, isn't super clear and doesn't empower them to like make informed choices about like how to spend their budget, and also is like very hard to market, we get to say, okay, we're a full stack team. And that's what this looks like, right? There's, 4 phases of business growth that we operate in. And these are the front end type things that we work on. These are the back end type things that we work on. And then these are, the procedures and the philosophies and the operating principles and the values that we have in place in our organization that kind of like fill in all the cracks. And so what that looks like is long-term relationships with our clients. We see a lot of clients either coming back to us repeatedly or just continuing to re-sign, so that as their business grows and evolves, we are kind of growing and evolving in our support of them, like kind of parallel. We see a lot of what we call full stack projects, which is that someone comes to us with, a product that's in development and or, they have prototypes or, something like that. And they're like, okay, I'm getting ready to launch this, but I don't have anything set up. And we do everything from brand building to go to market to optimization to growth. We really like to kind of be the one-stop shop for our clients. We really like to form a relationship built on trust and really form a partnership that allows us to kind of be on their team as their business moves through all of these growth phases.
That's amazing. I love that full approach, like a holistic approach
Mhm.
type thing. I think a lot of clients need that because they often don't look at the full picture and they just think that one thing is needed when it's going to have a huge impact on this other thing. And I love how you connect the dots between the two to make sure that it's seamless across the board.
I can't tell you how often I talk to someone and they're like, "Oh, you own a marketing agency? Like, oh, you're a business consultant. Like, I need help with like paid ads." Right? And then I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me about your ideal client. What does your sales funnel look like? Do you have brand messaging?" Like I kind of start asking them questions and they like can't always answer all those. And I'm like, yeah, you don't want to be like dumping money into paid ads if you haven't identified some of these things, because you're literally just going to be flushing that money down the toilet. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions about like quote unquote like effective marketing. And by taking this full stack approach, we get to say, okay, wait, we can totally look at paid ads like 6 months from now, but here are all of the things that need to happen to make that effective. And here are all of the like organic and unpaid brand building activities that you haven't done yet that you probably want to exhaust before you start spending money on paid ads.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you touched on brand building. Community is a huge focus, I find, for 2024. I feel like a lot of brands, influencers, businesses are now kind of focused on building out their communities and doing so in a more authentic way. And authentic is just such an overused buzzword
Yeah.
now, but essentially that. So, let's talk about how you approach community building, brand building.
Okay. I love this question. So, community building and brand building definitely have overlap, but I would not say that they are totally synonymous. So, I'm envisioning like a Venn diagram, right? Where we've got like community building, we've got brand building. There's definitely a part of that that is like one and the same, but not all of it. So, I just want to clarify that first. I'm going to start with the piece that kind of leans maybe a little bit more brand building, but definitely kind of pulls in the community. And then I'll shift more to like the like tactical parts of community building. So one of the like most powerful experiences that I went through that has had a huge impact on what we do differently at Curate and how we run as a marketing team is yoga teacher training. So I went through yoga teacher training and leadership training at the same time, and then I continued that leadership training, after for a while. And I learned so much in that context that is so well applied to human centric, consumer centric marketing. I literally, this was years ago, like I did this in like 2018. I still lean on these things every single day. And so, one of my biggest experiences and learnings from that environment that I kind of like tooled around with and like codified a little bit and now use very often when as it relates to brand experience is what I call the enrollment process. So we work with brands that are kind of challenging the norm in their industry, right? So they're not like necessarily creating a new category. They're not necessarily creating a whole new industry, although some of them do. They're mostly showing up in a space that already exists, that has problems that haven't really been like effectively solved yet. Right. And they're saying, like, okay, this is kind of like the status quo way that brands have been trying to solve this problem, but it's not really working. And so we're going to take this kind of like radically upside down approach to solving this problem in like a very different way that, they have receipts for, that's usually very much like research and data backed, that, they've really done due diligence on, that they've tested, et cetera, et cetera. And they're saying, look, we've got like a better way to do this. And that requires a lot of socialization, right? Because people don't know that this solution exists, right? They don't know to ask for it because they've never seen it before. And it also requires enrollment. So after you socialize it, actually getting that like buy-in that creates that long-term customer base. And really kind of enrolling people on like a super deep level, like really tapping into their like intrinsic desire to be associated with your brand. That's kind of our sweet spot. So this enrollment process that I learned in yoga teacher training is something that we mimic when we are creating any sort of brand experience, whether it's online, offline, et cetera, and specifically when we're building community. So there's a couple things that happen. So the first thing is creating connection. So this looks like acknowledging people, right? It's like, so like in a yoga studio, for example, someone walks in to go like check in at the front desk before they go like put their mat down and go to class. And you say hi, right? You say, hey, bonus points if you know their name, right? Hey, Pia, it's so great to see you. Welcome back. Right. So there's like this immediate connection point of like, I see you, I acknowledge you. At the coffee bus, what this looks like is, let's say, we have a rush and we're making a bunch of drinks and someone walks up to order and we can't help them right that second. Right. Our baristas are trained to look at them and say, hey, I'll be right with you. Give me 1 minute. So that person isn't just standing there waiting for you to like turn around at some point, but they know this person knows I'm here and like they'll be with me as soon as they can. What I also think this looks like, let's put it in like a business capacity, is using and remembering people's names, right? When you're responding to comments, when you're talking to people in the DMs, when you're, working with your clients whose teams are growing and they're like adding new faces onto the calls, whatever that is, just making sure that you really like connect with all of those people. Logistics are huge. So if I said this is in my bio, logistics are a love language. Without logistics, like nothing else works, right? Like it's not sexy, it's not shiny, it's not whatever, but like it's like I think about it as like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like logistics are on the bottom of the pyramid. You can get to like the super special 5% that's all the way at the top of the pyramid, but if you don't have logistics, it's not gonna work, right? So at the yoga studio, this looked like, okay, is the space clean? Do people know which door to walk in? Do they know where to put their shoes? Do they know where to fill up their water bottle? Are there hair ties in the bathroom? Like all of that, like super, little stuff. What this looks like at the coffee bus is having a really clear protocol of like what needs to happen to get set up. So because we're mobile and we move around, people we do our best to kind of communicate that in real time. So we've got like a text system, right? Where, we text our community every morning and we say this is where we're going to be today. And then we have to get there. And if we're not there when we said we're going to be there, people like, walk to like that corner, right? Like the corner of Anacapa and Yananali Street. And they're like, I don't see you. Where are you? Right. And so there's logistics. I think what this looks like in services business capacity is think about like your client onboarding process, right? Like, do they know what steps to take in what order to be set up for success? Do they know how to reschedule their calls if they need to? Do they know how to reach your team? Do they know which person on your team to tag for which things? Do they know where to see status updates on the deliverables that they're waiting for, et cetera, et cetera? Then there's like a social piece, right? And so we really like to feel like we belong. And so we do that by taking that person, this person that we're enrolling, and connecting them to someone else in the community. So let's say someone new shows up at the yoga studio. It's their first time. They're nervous. They're out of their element. They don't know anyone. They're like, oh, am I going to sweat all over this person that's next to me? Like, whatever. And so you kind of walk that person into the room and you say, hey, we recommend going somewhere in the back half of the room for your first class so you can like watch the people in front of you. Because you've never been here before, you might not know what to do. But if you're in the back, there's people in front of you, you can kind of like mimic what they're doing if you don't understand what the instructor is saying. I'm going to put you right next to this person. Pia, this is Jessica. Jessica, this is Pia. You guys both have this like small random thing in common. And, Jessica does this and this, and Pia does this and this. And like you kind of cue people up to like make that social connection, right? All of a sudden you're like, oh, I belong here. There's someone like me here. At the coffee bus, what this looks like is introducing our regular customers to each other. Like we'll be serving sometimes and we have like two regulars that we see, a couple times a week, and they'll be there at the same time and they're both standing there waiting for their coffee and they're looking at their phones. And like we'll actually kind of like turn around and say like, oh, Joe, do you know Brian? Brian, do you know Joe? Like you guys both come here all of the time. And it's up to them to like kind of chit chat or whatever, but we're showing them like, look, you belong here, you're one of us. And what that looks like in our consulting business is kind of constantly introducing our clients to one another. So, we'll have one client that says, I need a book publisher. And I'm like, oh, we have another client that is in the process of publishing a book. Let me connect you to them and maybe they can make some recommendations. I don't know that much about book publishing, but this person does because they've been through this process. Then there is being of service. That's the fourth thing. So in the yoga studio, this looks like, let me go get you a block, right? Or here's a towel, I grabbed it for you, or something that just like helps people, right? One of the things that we do at the coffee bus is sometimes people struggle to like get the lids on their cups. This is so silly, but I'll say like, can I help you with that? And like, at coffee shops, that's not usually a thing that happens. But like, I'll literally stop what I'm doing and say like, oh, like, I don't want you to spill this all over yourself. Do you mind if I like touch it and snap it on for you? And then what that looks like in, the marketing agency services business space is we'll send our clients articles that are relevant to them, right? Or if I'm like scrolling on Instagram and I see a post that is a really good example of something I was trying to explain to them on a previous call. So like, look, this is what I was talking about. Like, do you remember I said this, this, and this? Like, here's a really good example of this. Recently that came up with a checkout experience where I actually bought something online and I got to choose between like 5 different donation options based on my values, right? So it was like, do you want your 3% of this purchase to go to like an organization that supports this or supports this or supports this or supports this? And I got to choose. And that was something that we were talking about with a client who's hosting a conference in May that we're supporting with. And so I like screenshotted it and was like, hey, I just bought these vitamins, but like, look at this checkout experience. Like we could do something like this. So that's kind of what that looks like. And then the last thing is follow through. So big fan of like closing all of the loops. And so let's say you're at the yoga studio. This is, that person that you got situated before class. They walk out and you're like, how was it? Did you like it? Like, what was new for you? What was different? Do you think you're going to come back? Like, really just acknowledging people kind of on the way out as well. What that looks like in the coffee business is making sure that after we give someone their drink, that we make eye contact with them and say, like, Joe, it was great to meet you. Have a great day. Hope to see you again soon. What it looks like in our marketing business is our offboarding procedure. So we're really big on, we download a zip folder from like our Google folder of all the assets and send it over to the client. We send them a feedback form and ask them to reflect on their experience. We always like send a formal email and say, okay, this is like the official offboarding moment. Is there anything else that you need in order to like part ways and feel complete right now? And so that's a 5-step process. And it sounds like a lot, but once you practice it every day, you can do those 5 things in any one interaction with anyone. And so that is how you create a brand experience. And what you actually do in each of those 5 steps is going to be different depending on your brand values and the experience you want to provide and what type of business you have and what the context is, but you can apply it over and over and over again. And so that is how we create a brand experience. And that's really an effective way to like kind of show up and build community as well. Kind of like the strictly community building side, what I have found to be really helpful is just like constantly meeting people and talking to people. I will, slide into the DMs of other business owners in my local area and just say like, hey, I've been following you for a really long time. I really like what you're doing. Do you want to go for a walk next week? That's it.
That's great. I love that. I've been doing the coffee date thing, whether it's virtual or in person.
Yeah.
It's such a great way just to get outside of the business transactional conversation and to get them a little bit more at ease, because I feel like everyone's just waiting for the pitch in DMs. You know what I mean? Like it can get super awkward. So I love that. Amazing. Now let's talk about preparing your business to scale. So this is something, scale is a scary word for many because they think that it means turning into a big conglomerate, but essentially it can mean whatever it means to you, right? So it's like maybe staying small, boutique style, but you want to do more with less effort type thing. But preparing your business to scale takes work, it takes strategy, it takes systems and whatnot. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
So I think this is a little bit of a hard question for me to answer because I think scale can look so different for so many people. When I first started Curate, scale meant, okay, you go from providing services to launching an online course so you can like serve way more people. But that's certainly not the only way to scale. So for example, the way that we actually ended up scaling at Curate was we started as a, consulting firm. And then our clients kept saying, can you just do this for me? Or like, do you know anyone who can do this? Like, I really trust your opinion. I like the way you do things. Who did you hire for this? Who do you trust to do this? And could you refer them to me? And like, we found ourselves just kind of like doing more of the work for our clients to the point where I was like, I want to be able to just do everything for them because that's what they're asking for. Like, they want us to do these things. And so, okay, we're going to spin up an agency team, right? So we can provide both strategic partnership in a consulting capacity and then also actually provide implementation and execution like services and actually do the work for people as well. And that was a great way to scale, right? It allows us to serve the same clients in a greater capacity. It allows us to have repeat clients who, worked with us in a consulting capacity and then hire us later for a project. And it allows us to have longer term relationships with our clients. It gives, new clients more ways to engage with us based on what they need. And that's been awesome. What scale looks like on the coffee business side is, potentially multiple vehicles, right? But it also looks like variation in revenue streams. So, we do delivery one day a week where people pre-order and we bottle it up and deliver it at their house, which is great because it's a way to bring in money that doesn't require a barista to be on the clock serving somewhere. Like if the weather is bad, for example. And we do workshops. That's another revenue stream, right? So we're actually teaching people how to make coffee. So I think like that's another way that you can think about scale. So it really depends, right? I don't think it means any one thing. And I think that the way that you prepare depends on how you want to scale. I also think that there's only so much preparation we can do. Like I said at the beginning, like nothing replaces action. And so taking action, paying really close attention to what's working and what's not, and then building upon what's working, adjusting what's not in like really, really tight, short feedback circles. Like we do this, like our feedback cycle is like a week max, right? So like if we do one task one week and we do the same task the next week, it might look different if it didn't work the first time. So really, really tight feedback cycles. And that's just something you have to do as you do it, right? Like I don't think you can do that ahead of time. You really need to like be in it. If there was like one thing that I kind of learned the hard way that I would share, I would say it's about tech debt. So again, this is a software term, and the kind of layman, probably not 100% accurate definition of this is like when you put technological things in place and then they get outdated really quickly and then they're not being used and they just sit there. So think about like the folder on your Google Drive that has your brand assets from like 2 years ago. That's tech debt, right? Like you put a lot of effort into that, you organize it, you've got folders and subfolders and all the files are labeled, and you invested a lot into this, and now it's just sitting there. It's taking up storage space, you're not using it, your team doesn't reference it, it's not linked to anything. That's an example of tech debt. And so as your business grows bigger and bigger and you serve more and more people, the potential for tech debt also increases, right? All of a sudden you've just got so many files or, course videos or old free opt-ins or whatever that's just like taking up space on all of your software subscriptions. And so less is more, honestly, is what I've learned. Don't fully build anything out until you know for sure that it's going to be around for a while. And schedule, I would say, like an annual kind of like clean out of all of that kind of stuff. So every year we audit all of our software subscriptions and like cancel all the ones that we're not actually using. We, delete old Canva files. We consolidate Google Drive folders. We just kind of like clean everything up. Otherwise, it's been 3 years and you're like, oh my God. And then it feels like way too big to account for. And, depending on the resources you have available, that may or may not impact your scale. But I have found that it definitely kind of like weighs us down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing that I've learned.
100% agree. Now, let's talk about what you have available to support your community. How can people work with you? What are the different containers?
Yeah. So we have kind of two main branches of our business, consulting and configuration. So consulting is strategic partnership. Think of me as kind of like your chief strategy officer, your chief marketing officer. Some people have said kind of like fractional co-founder, where I come in, I work with you as the founder of your business on like a strategic level. This is great if you're the kind of person that, just needs a little bit of guidance and then can like totally like run with it, right? Like you feel super confident, like designing your own graphics or like you're doing your own copywriting. You just need to know the best way to do it. And you want someone to kind of inform your marketing strategy from like a bird's eye view, kind of teach you best practices, get you set up for success. And then you're like, I'm good to go. I'll do it. And then you can like review it for me. The configuration side is our agency side. This is like the full stack marketing services. We have 4 different phases there, which is brand building, go-to-market, optimization, and growth. So we custom quote everything depending on the scope. You still get me as the strategic lead and almost like chief of staff role. So I'm still kind of driving the ship, but I've got a super talented team of specialists that come in and do everything, whether it's, a photo shoot or website development or copywriting or brand identity design or content creation or whatever. So those are kind of the 2 different ways that you can engage with us, or you can do some sort of combination of both. And it's a lot of options, and we take a really kind of consultative approach in writing out proposals. So we're here to help kind of guide you towards what we think would make the biggest difference.
Amazing. So if anybody wants to learn more about you, they want to connect with you, where can they find you online, where you hang out the most?
So we're on Instagram. I would not say that we hang out there as frequently as we used to, but we do put out content on Instagram. It's at curatewellco. And then our website is curatewell.co.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Pia, for joining us today, for sharing your incredible journey and your expertise. I know that everyone's going to have crazy great takeaways that they can apply in their business. I love your approach to brand and community building. That's a huge one, and I'm definitely going to apply some things myself. So thank you so much for sharing everything you just talked about today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Jessica. This was great.
Thank you for joining us today. Your presence truly elevates Love Unplugged into a home for freedom-driven women who aspire to be visionary CEOs. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd be honored if you take a moment to rate and review the show. Your feedback helps us bring more impactful conversations to our community. Let's continue to grow this empowering community together. Until next time.